Hi, I'm Ashley, follower of Jesus, therapist, and grief educator. Welcome to my channel. So recently I was on Facebook and I had seen a pretty broad post that somebody had put out about somebody who had passed away prematurely. They were pretty young. And I was going through the comments on this post and somebody had said, God must have needed another angel. Yeah. Maybe you're watching and you're like, oh no. And maybe you're watching and you're like, what's wrong with that? That's why I'm doing this video. So I actually had a lot of respect for this person because they were kind of eaten alive in the comments, and they responded back and essentially said, like, I didn't really know what else to say. I was just trying to say something kind of comforting. And that brings us to a really good point that I want to talk about today. What we say versus what we do when people are experiencing grief. So I actually recently did a poll on Instagram, and I have some responses here about unhelpful things that people have been told when they're grieving. One, it gets easier. Jesus will only give you what you can handle. Okay. Anything that starts with at least, that's good. At least you still have XYZ. Everything happens for a reason. I think I could do a whole nother video on that one. Trying to solve my grief or offering solutions. It was time. Or no use to being upset about someone that isn't here anymore. And then actually this one is really good right here. Somebody wrote, or those who simply avoid engaging with your loss for fear of upsetting you. And so I actually want to land here for a second. And I don't want to get too stuck on the things that people say versus don't say, because there are actually a lot of, so I did a separate poll about things that were helpful. And there was actually a little bit of overlap. For example, some people said it was helpful when people said they were praying for them or they apologized for their loss. And some people were like, don't say I'm sorry for your loss. So that's kind of hard because, again, everybody's different. Some things are helpful for some people, some things aren't. But what I want to actually focus on is why we say these things and what would maybe be more helpful instead. And I think a key point, a reason why we say kind of cheap platitudes like this, often very theologically unsound, when people are experiencing grief, we'll say that, I want to make them feel more comfortable. I think the reality is we actually want to make ourselves feel more comfortable. Because it's uncomfortable when faced with pain, especially somebody else's pain. Maybe we haven't experienced before, or maybe, again, we just don't know what to say. And so an invitation I actually want to give in this video is, instead of focusing on the right thing to say, what if we focus on how to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable with the person who's grieving? I know I've talked about John 11 in previous videos when Jesus goes to be with Mary and Martha. Jesus doesn't go and give them cheap platitudes, right? He doesn't say, like, spoiler alert for the end of the story, Jesus actually raises Lazarus back up from the grave. So Lazarus is alive again. Jesus doesn't say, like, calm down, guys, I'm going to raise him up from the grave. He doesn't jump to that. He weeps with them. It actually says Jesus was angry. And so I want us to recognize that the Savior of the universe gives us a really good framework for how to be with other people when they are grieving. So instead of focusing on, again, the cheap platitudes of everything happens for a reason, God needed another angel. Actually, we could do a separate video on how theologically inaccurate those things are. But I want to invite you to actually ask yourself, am I actually trying to make this person more comfortable, or am I trying to make myself more comfortable? I wonder if we shifted from trying to make somebody feel better to sitting with them in their grief. Because being a friend in grief is much less about saying the right thing and much more about learning to be present. And actually, when I did that other poll on Instagram, the one about what was actually helpful, oftentimes people didn't say things that people said to them. They said it was just the people who showed up and sat with me in it, who didn't try to offer solutions, who were like, yeah, this sucks. who sent meal trains or dropped things off at their house or just did practical things to help them out. And here's the good news about those of you watching who are learning to allow yourself to experience feelings of grief and feel that discomfort for yourself. By doing that, you are actually becoming a better friend to people in your life now or in the future who will experience grief. Because you're becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I wonder if that's the best gift we can give to a fellow griever. Somebody to just sit in the pain with them. Thank you for watching. If this was encouraging, I want you to like and subscribe so you get notified when more videos are posted.